Norway may be a small country, but it's an oil and gas superpower. With a sovereign wealth fund worth almost $900 billion, it's a financial superpower too. But it's also unusual in a political sense. The finance minister who manages all this wealth, Siv Jensen, is the leader of the Progress Party, a party which critics have compared to the right-wing populist fringe that established politicians across Europe are desperate to keep out of power. Ms. Jensen is with me in the FT studio today to discuss whether Norway may not have some lessons to impart to the rest of the world on economics, finance and politics. Minister Jensen, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's start with the economics. Norway is, of course, a very oil-dependent country, oil and gas. It's a big oil producer. It's a very big natural gas exporter. We've seen oil and gas prices fall recently, and people have been at a loss how to explain it. I'd like to know how you see the prospects for the oil and gas markets going forward.
I wish I knew the answer to that. This is highly difficult to assess what will be the future prices on both oil and gas. And as a oil and gas producing country, we are very used to fluctuations in oil and gas prices. We have some buffers in our financial policy structure in order to dam up for fluctuations. But what we have known for quite some time is that we will see a decline in our own investments in the oil sector. We've sort of reached peak point, which will put some stress to the Norwegian economy in the next decades. So we need to impose structural reforms. We need to focus on competition, to improve tax systems and a lot of other important and necessary reforms in order to be competitive in other arenas apart from oil and gas.
Europe is very worried about its energy security at the moment, especially in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Can Norwegian gas production do more to help ensure energy security in Europe?
Well, at least Norway is a very stable producer of oil and gas. We have good and long-term relationships with Europe when it comes to delivery on oil and gas, and we will continue to be so.
I think Norway is supplying the new LNG terminal in Lithuania.
Yes.
On productivity growth, this is something the whole rich world is worried about. For Norway, it has perhaps been easier because of the inflow of oil revenue. But productivity growth has been declining in Norway as well. And what do you think are the main factors or the main reforms that have to be carried out to reverse that, to increase productivity growth again?
Well, we've actually appointed a productivity commission to give us the answers to why we have seen a fall in productivity growth over the last 8 years and what can be done about it. But at the same time, the government is eager to introduce reforms. Right now, we're not waiting for the commission, so that's why we are dealing with lower taxation. That's why we are trying to introduce a reform to have fewer and more robust municipalities. That's why we go through all different aspects of public sector to make sure that we spend taxpayers' money more wisely.
Some of that taxpayer money is salted down in this huge sovereign wealth fund, the pension fund, or the oil fund, about $850 billion last time I checked. That makes you a very big player in the financial markets. I think Norway owns more than 1% of all publicly quoted stocks in the world. There were some rumors before the coalition that you are part of with the Conservative Party that there might be thoughts about some fairly radical reform of the oil fund, dividing it up, maybe investing in new asset classes and so on. Can you give us your view of where you see the oil fund's governance and practice and investment strategy going?
There has been a broad parliamentary consensus on how to govern the fund for a very long time. We still have that broad consensus, which means that the government and parliament works very closely together on addressing the overall issues concerning the strategy of the fund, and then we leave the management to the central bank. That has been a very good deal for us for a very long time because we will not let this fund be a political instrument. So we are not to take political decisions when we invest. It's supposed to be and it is, a financial investor with a long-term perspective And we focus a lot on transparency and ethical awareness. And I think that's very important for such a huge fund that it's actually become.
Your party is ambivalent about the EU. Norway, of course, is not part of the EU, so it's not the same issue in Norway as it is in this country, where it's a very hot debate. Ambivalent about the EU, it was traditionally critical to immigration. And as you just pointed out, it's very much in favor of a lower tax burden on companies and individuals. The party in this country that stands for those things, Euroscepticism, criticism of immigration, and much lower taxes, is the insurgent party, to call it that, the United Kingdom Independence Party. Now, why is it that in Norway, a party that has campaigned on those issues has successfully converted electoral support, you got 16% in the election that brought you into government, into actual government power, whereas in the rest of Europe, you don't really see that happen?
Well, first of all, I don't think you can compare the Norwegian Progress Party to any other European party. So just put that aside. I think for Norway, we've had 2 referendums of membership of the European Union. Both ended with a negative result. We don't have a debate concerning a membership in Norway at all, and we are connected to Europe through the EEA agreement, which gives us access to the internal market. That's of course important to Norway, since we export 80% to the European market and import 70%. So of course we are in so many ways part of Europe, but we are not in the Union, and there is I don't see that we will be in any foreseeable future. We don't have any debate on this in Norwegian politics for the time being.
And yet you are dependent on decisions taken in Brussels or in the national governments that are part of the EU. For you as finance minister, how do you do your job when so much depends on decisions in a club that you're not part of?
Well, I spend a lot of time negotiating important issues with the European Commission. And I think it's important for Norway to interact at an early stage in order to put forward the Norwegian perspectives on some of the legislations that are on the table in the Commission.
To paraphrase a great Englishman, with Europe, if not of Europe. Siv Jensen, thank you very much for talking to us at the Financial Times.
Thank you very much.